All right, guys, welcome back to Coffee and Questions. I'm so glad you could join us again today for this. Today I'm just drinking a McCafe coffee from my Keurig machine, so nothing fancy, but I hope you have the opportunity to grab a coffee or a chai or something and just sit down and let's continue our discussion. We've been talking about how do we know that God exists, even though there are such things as pain and evil and suffering in this world. And last week we were talking about natural evils, and I know last week's video was just a little bit confusing. I had a few people talking to me about it afterwards, and what I was trying to answer is why would a good God, why would a good and loving God allow such things as, let's say, tornadoes or earthquakes in this world? If there really is a good God, then he must have a pretty good reason as to why he would allow something like that. In fact, I believe that Christianity has the best answer for why there even exists natural evils. You see, Christianity tells us and says that God did not create the world that way. In fact, he never intended it for it to be that way. In fact, he doesn't like natural evils at all. But his good creation was corrupted by humanity and has caused these natural evils. So he is working through a plan right now to get rid of those natural evils. He desires a world where there is no pain, there is no suffering, where there is no death and no evil. The problem that's stopping him is humanity itself. You see, he loves humanity so much, he wants them to be a part of that world. But you cannot take imperfect humans into this perfect world. We would simply destroy it again, or it would destroy us. And because he's a loving God, he wants everybody to have the opportunity to come into this perfect world. So he continues to wait for people to have that opportunity before he finishes that creation. Today I told you we were going to kind of finish up by talking about how pain and how evil actually do point to the reality of God existing, not away from it. And so the first question is evil. How do we know that evil actually points to the reality of God? Well, the first thing we need to ask is, how do we know that something is evil? Some would argue that, well, it's just a social convention, something that we've created in order to help humanity survive the best that we can. We've built these things into our world, hoping that humanity would have the best chances to survive. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because some of the things that we declare to be evil go against what Darwin talks about with survival of the fittest. Let's go to an extreme, for example. Nazi gas chambers. Some of you may not be aware, or some of you are probably already aware, that Hitler was not the first person to think about this idea that the human race would benefit from having the weakest members of our society killed off. In fact, that's exactly what Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest means. Let the weak ones die off because we become stronger, with the strongest survive. Hitler simply was the one who took their theories and decided to put it into action. He did something what we now declare as evil. The thousands that he killed, the starvation, the torture that occurred, we cannot think of it in any other way than it being evil, because it was evil. And if you want to talk to me about it not being evil, we can come have that conversation. It was simply downright evil. Yet survival of the fittest tells us that this approach makes sense. That by killing off those who are the weakest, our society, our humanity will grow to become and flourish and become better. Yet from the lie that we are told to the abuse of the handicapped, we recognize certain things to be evil. We recognize certain things to be evil that goes against survival of the fittest, or even what's best for our society. And so we can dig into this for a while, but we don't have the time. If we recognize something to be evil, even though it contradicts survival of the fittest, or even what is beneficial for society, if we say that love and care for those who have physical and mental handicaps is a good thing, we have to ask why. Why do we declare these things to be good when nature says it shouldn't be? Why do we find that consistently around the world we find that these things, these certain things are considered evil and certain things are considered good? And the best question, the best answer for that is that, the most logical answer for that is that morality is either built into us or it's coming to us from something outside of nature. Because nature says that should be okay. If something comes from outside of nature that transcends nature, that thing must be a god. Moreover, the morality that we receive, since it is consistent from across several societies, it implies a certain amount of information that is being conveyed to us. And information always comes from a someone. And so we have to consider the reality that there must be a God of some kind who is passing on this morality to us. And I think that the one that makes the most sense is the God of the Bible. Lastly, we have to ask the question, how does pain point to the creation or to the existence of God? And I think this is also quite simple if we think about it. Pain is something that protects us. It's something that takes care of us. It's something that helps us. For example, if I stick my hand in the fire, there's pain that tells me to take it out. Otherwise, the fire would destroy me. It heals us in the sense that if I have pain in my arm, eventually I go to the doctor and get an x-ray and realize it's broken. And so pain, even though we don't like it, is something good for us. It's beneficial for us. It helps us. Likewise, pain is something that teaches us and protects us. Once Dr. Paul Brand was given grant money, to try to build an artificial pain system. Dr. Paul Brand had done a lot of work with lepers, and the primary problem with leprosy is that they lose pain in areas affected by their body, so they don't know when to stop. They don't know to take their hand out of the fire, and so their bodies can get destroyed by this lack of pain, this lack of feeling. And the problem is he couldn't create receptors that were fine enough to be able to decide what's pain and what's simply hand doing its work. At first they tried to use systems that would create a buzzing in the ear or flashing lights in their eyes, and well, the reality is they found out that people would just override it. They would just keep going until they could finish what they started. See, only pain screams loud enough, "Stop!" or "Fix me!" to make us respond. In this I also see the hand of a great creator God, a great clever creator. One who can create a system that allows us to lift a couple 100 pounds without much discomfort, but after only a few grams of pressure with a needle creates pain. What we need to do is recognize that when we see evidence for a design, we look for the designer, not for some complicated system as to why a designer may not exist. There are evidence for design all throughout nature, but nowhere more so than in the marvels of our own human bodies. Science has never been able to come close to creating something as complex of a system as we are. Again, I'd love to continue these conversations. I know that in this I've taken several large ideas and tried to condense them into a short period of time. So if you got questions about what you heard today, please send them to me. Let's continue this conversation. In fact, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with someone in person for these coffee and questions and just go through your questions and find the best answers. Resources for today include, of course, once again, I brought my books. Philip Yancey, Where is God When It Hurts? This is what my copy looks like. He goes into great detail about pain. He was one that wrote about Dr. Brand. In fact, Yancey and Dr. Brand have a book together called The Gift of Pain. I've never read it, but I've heard it is good. Also, another book I highly, highly recommend, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Can you read that? All right. Mere Christianity, again, very good book. He does a good job of explaining how the reality of morality, the reality of evil points to the existence of God. So without God, we would never recognize that something was actually evil. Thanks for listening, guys. And remember, you are loved. You're not alone.